The man who had spent an entire year trying to bury me opened his front door, looked me dead in the eye, and smiled. "Happy birthday," he said. I almost dropped the fishing rods in my hands. You have to understand who this man was to me before that moment, because that single sentence, "Happy birthday," was the most disorienting thing anyone had said to me in months. This was the man I had been at war with. The man whose name I couldn't say without my jaw tightening. The man who, less than half a year earlier, had called the police to keep a little girl from coming home. And now he was standing in his doorway, grinning at me like we were old friends, wishing me well on my birthday, while my daughter waved goodbye from behind him. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or get back in my truck and drive until I ran out of road. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense unless I tell you how I got here. My name doesn't matter much for this story, so just think of me as a dad. That's the only title I've ever really wanted, and it's the one I was terrified I'd lost. 10 years ago, I met a woman named Marissa. She had a daughter, 14 months old, all chubby cheeks and a laugh that could fill a room. Her name was Lily. Lily wasn't mine by blood. Her biological father, a man I'll call Trent, was out of the picture back then, tangled up in his own life, his own messes. So when Marissa and I got serious, when we moved in together and built something that looked like a family, I didn't hesitate. I picked that little girl up, I held her, I changed her diapers, I learned the exact way she liked her sandwiches cut. And somewhere in there, I genuinely can't tell you the date, she stopped being Marissa's daughter and became, in every way that counted, mine. I taught her to ride a bike in a grocery store parking lot on a Sunday morning. I sat through every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every fever in the middle of the night where I drove to the 24-hour pharmacy in my pajamas. I was the one who checked the closet for monsters. I was the one who showed up. For nearly 10 years, from when she was 14 months old until she was almost 11, I was her dad. Not step, just dad. And the thing about Lily and me, our thing was fishing. I want to tell you about the fishing because it matters. I'd take her out to this little lake about 20 minutes from the house, and we'd sit on the bank with our lines in the water for hours. Here's the secret, though. She didn't even like fishing. She told me once, maybe 9 years old, dead serious, "Dad, I don't really like the worms or the fish or any of it." And I asked her why she always begged to come along then. She looked at me like I was slow and said, "Because I like fishing with you." That's a sentence I've carried in my chest like a stone ever since. She wasn't my fishing buddy because of the fish. She was my fishing buddy because of me, and I was hers because of her. So you can imagine what it did to me when about a month into all of this falling apart, I sat in my truck in a parking lot and realized I might never sit on that lake bank with her again. Here's how it came apart. About 5 months before that birthday at the front door, Marissa told me she wanted to separate. There were a lot of reasons, and I'll be honest, they weren't all hers. I made mistakes in that marriage. I wasn't perfect. We both had things to answer for, and I'm not going to sit here and paint myself as some flawless victim, because that's not the truth, and the truth is the only thing I've got left worth telling. But the separation itself, painful as it was, wasn't the part that gutted me. The part that gutted me came next. We had been in the middle of a custody case. Trent, the biological father, had re-entered the picture a while back, and he and his wife, a woman I'll call Kayla, had been fighting for custody of Lily. And during that fight, things had gotten ugly in the way only family court can get ugly. Lily would come home from visits at their place and repeat things. Awful things. That her mom was horrible. That her mom stole money from her. That her mom was a liar. She was a child, repeating the script that the adults around her had handed her. And every time she did it, I watched a little more confusion settle into her eyes, like she was being asked to choose sides in a war she didn't start and didn't understand. There was even a holiday, I'll never forget it, where Lily was supposed to come back from a visit, and they just didn't bring her back. At a time when they had zero custody, zero legal standing. Marissa had to involve the police to get our daughter home. So when I tell you that Trent and Kayla were, in my mind, the enemy, I want you to understand it wasn't paranoia. It was a year of evidence. They were the people trying to take my daughter and turn her against the only home she'd ever known. And then Marissa did the thing I never saw coming. In the middle of the separation, she decided to give up custody of Lily to Trent. Just handed her over to the very people we'd been fighting. to the man who'd weaponized a child against us. I sat there stunned. Because here's the math that nobody tells you about being a stepfather who never adopted. When the mother gives up custody, the stepfather has nothing. No rights, no standing, no legal thread connecting me to the little girl I'd raised for a decade. We were never legally married, Marissa and I. On paper, I was a stranger. On paper, I was nobody. I remember the night it fully hit me. I was lying in a bed that suddenly felt enormous, in a house that had gone silent, and I did the cold arithmetic. No marriage certificate, no adoption papers, no biological link. The custody now belonged to two people who had every reason in the world to cut me out forever. I had exactly one thread left, and it was thin as spider silk. A kid's messaging app called Stars where Lily and I could send messages back and forth. That was it. That was the whole rope I had to hold on to her with. So I held on to it. I reached out to her on that app constantly. Some days she'd reply. Some days she wouldn't. And every notification that wasn't from her felt like a small death. I told myself she was just a kid, just busy, just adjusting. But underneath that, a darker voice kept whispering, "This is how it starts." The manipulation trend had already shown he was capable of. It would keep working. Slowly, day by day, until one day she just wouldn't want to see me anymore, and I'd have no legal right to do a single thing about it. I saw her twice in that first stretch, twice in over a month, and both times the same thing came out of her mouth, the thing that broke me clean in half. She was scared she'd never get to see my family again. My parents, her aunts and uncles, her grandparents on my side, the whole world of people who loved her. "Will I still get to see Grandma?" she asked me, her voice small. "Will I still see everybody?" And I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Of course you will. That's never going to change." And then I drove home and I gripped the steering wheel and I cried because I wasn't confident a single word of what I just promised her was true. That was when I broke down and asked for help. I'm not a man who asks for help easily, but I was drowning and I got online and I poured it all out to a community of other fathers. I told them everything, that I didn't think I even counted as a dad anymore, that I had no rights, that the best I could realistically hope for was that maybe someday, when she was 18 and out from under all of it, Lily might reach out to me on her own and we could try to build something back. That's where my hope had shrunk to. A maybe. Someday. When she's grown. The responses I got back probably saved something in me. One father wrote to me about his own childhood, how his mother had lied to him about his dad for years, how he'd grown up believing his father had abandoned him, and how it wasn't until he was in his 20s that he saw through all of it and realized his dad had never left, had been there the whole time, fighting through the lies. He told me, "Children grow up and recognize who did them right and who did them wrong. Your daughter will come around." I wrote back to him, and I'll tell you exactly what I said, because it's the truest thing I've ever typed. "I'm not the best at this. I made my mistakes. I did my best as her dad. I just don't know if I'll even be her dad after this. I just miss being a dad." That was the whole of it. I miss being a dad. Not in the abstract. I miss the specific, ordinary weight of it. The lunches, the homework, the bad jokes she pretended not to laugh at. I missed her. What would you have done in this situation? A child you raised for 10 years, no legal right to see her, and the people who hold all the cards are the ones who try to turn her against you. Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it because back then I had no idea what the right move even was. Another father told me about his state, his country, and that there might be legal avenues, visitation rights, if I got a lawyer. And I had to tell him the hard truth. I'm in Indiana, and I was flat broke. The custody case had drained me dry. I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight for visitation of a child I had no biological or legal claim to. That was a door that simply wasn't open to me. He understood. He told me to just maintain whatever bond one could, to accept that so much of this was out of my control, and to hold on to the truth that the years I'd already had with her wouldn't disappear. "You'll always be a part of the person she becomes," he wrote. And I told him about the fishing, about how she was my fishing buddy who didn't even like fishing. And I told him I missed her so much it was hard to breathe sometimes. And then there was one comment that I read over and over until I had it memorized. A father wrote to me, and the gist of it was this: "She needs you." Not, "She might want to see you someday." She needs you, right now, more than ever. He laid it out for me. That adolescence is brutal even in the most stable, loving home. That her biological father was throwing emotional knives, and some of them were landing, cutting her. That even if her mom and I had separated as gently as humanly possible, in Lily's head her entire safe world was detonating. She didn't know what the future held. She'd probably asked her friends with divorced parents what it was like and heard horror stories. She was lying awake, wondering when the bad things were going to start happening to her. And he said something that chilled me. He said, she felt every argument, every silence, every tear in our house. She might think it's her fault. She might even be thinking that the whole problem would just disappear if she disappeared. He was speaking from his own experience as a kid in a divorce, and he wasn't being dramatic. He was warning me. He said, she needs you to correct those misimpressions at the very least. She needs to hear from you that yes, you love her. Yes, she's worthy of love. No, her being gone would not fix anything. It would make everything infinitely worse. Yes, you in particular still care whether she gets a good grade or makes the school play. She needs you. Get whatever resources you need to make that happen. I read that, and I made a decision in my gut. Whatever this looked like, text messages, video calls, smoke signals, I was going to stay in her life. I was going to be the steady, boring, reliable presence that never flinched, no matter how thin the rope got. I told that father, I'm going to be there for her as best I can. It's going to be an uphill battle. And another dad told me to start building the groundwork now for reconnecting when she turned 18, that there were forms of meaningful communication that didn't require being in the same room. And I told him the truth. I already had been. From the moment the door closed, I've been holding that rope with both hands. So that's where I was. Broke, heartbroken, holding onto a kid's messaging app and a thread of hope, bracing myself for the long, slow erosion of a relationship I'd built over a decade. That was November. I genuinely believed the best years were behind us. I want you to sit with how hopeless that felt, because what happened next is the only reason I'm telling you any of this. The first thing that changed was so small, I almost didn't notice it. Lily and I started video calling. Then we started playing Fortnite together online, me, a grown man, fumbling around in a video game, so I could hear my kid laugh at how bad I was at it. Dad, you're literally running into the wall, she'd howl, and I'd say I meant to do that, and she'd lose it. Those games became sacred to me. I'd answer every single call. I mean every one. I once took a call from her in the middle of a date, just stepped away, talked to my kid, came back. Because she needed to know, down in her bones, that I would always pick up. That whatever else fell apart, that one thing was permanent. Then my family started having her over for the holidays. The aunts and uncles, the grandparents, the exact people Lily had been terrified of losing, got to see her again. She sat at our holiday table. She got hugged half to death by my mother. And slowly, the thing I'd promised her in that parking lot when I wasn't sure I was even telling the truth, it started becoming true. She wasn't losing us. We were still here. But here's where the story took a turn that genuinely confused me. And I want to walk you through it carefully because it's the heart of everything. When I needed to arrange time to see Lily, I assumed I'd just coordinate with Marissa, my ex, the mother, the person who, in theory, still had a relationship with our daughter through whatever arrangement she'd made with Trent. That's the logical assumption, right? But that's not how it went. The first time I set up a visit, I went through Kayla, the stepmom, the woman I considered an enemy. And it worked. She arranged it, made it easy. But then, weirdly, the person I actually met up with to pick up Lily was Marissa. So I figured, okay, going forward, Marissa will just handle this with me directly, mother to former partner. She didn't. Marissa ignored basically every message that came from my side of the family. If it came directly from me, she'd maybe reply, eventually spottily, half the time. But anything from my mom, my family, trying to coordinate seeing Lily, silence. And meanwhile, on the other end, Trent and Kayla, the people I'd spent a year at war with, were the ones making it happen. My own mother started calling Kayla directly to arrange time with Lily because Kayla actually answered. Sit with how upside down that is. The antagonistic biological father and his wife were facilitating my relationship with my daughter more than her own mother was. The people I'd been told were the villains of this story were the ones bending over backwards to keep me in Lily's life. And the person I'd assumed was my ally by default, the mother of the child I raised, was the one going dark, the one taking the bare minimum time with her own daughter, the one who couldn't be bothered to answer a text from a grandmother trying to plan a visit. I didn't understand it. It didn't fit the story I'd been living inside for over a year. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a second to hit that subscribe button. We post new stories every single day, and the way this one turns is something you won't want to miss. Because I'm about to tell you the conversation that flipped everything I thought I knew completely on its head. It was my birthday, earlier this month. My mom had arranged with Kayla for Lily to spend the whole day with me and my parents. We still had to pick her up from Marissa, who, true to form, barely communicated and just sort of handed her over. But once we had her, God, it was a perfect day. We got sushi, which Lily had decided was the most sophisticated food on earth. We went fishing, the two of us on the bank, lines in the water just like the old days. She still didn't care about the fish. She just wanted to be there with me. We walked around a park as the afternoon went gold. And we talked. We talked about everything and nothing, the way you can only do with someone you've known their whole life. For one full day, I had my daughter back, and the war felt 1,000 miles away. At the end of the day, we drove her back to Trent's house. And that's when it happened, the moment I started this whole story with. I walked up to that door with the fishing rod still in my hands, braced for the same cold tension I'd carried for a year. And Trent opened the door, and he smiled at me. A real smile. "Happy birthday," he said. The man who'd been my enemy. The man who'd called the cops to keep this kid from coming home. Wishing me a happy birthday like we were neighbors at a barbecue. I had something I needed to discuss with Kayla anyway. The Christmas before, Christmas of 2024, I'd given Lily a gift, something meaningful, and like a fool, I'd left it at Marissa's house for safekeeping until Lily was old enough to really have it. Now I wanted to figure out how to get it to my daughter. So Kayla and I stepped aside to talk privately. We've always had this unspoken rule. Marissa and I established it long ago, and it carried over, that you don't discuss the negative adult stuff about a kid's parents within earshot of the kid. So we walked off to the side, out of Lily's hearing, just to talk logistics. That conversation rearranged my entire understanding of the last 2 years of my life. I won't give you every single detail, but here's the core of what Kayla told me, gently, like she was setting down something heavy she'd been carrying. Marissa, my ex, had been lying to them, for who knows how long. She'd painted me as a monster, as the problem, as a giant piece of garbage who'd made everyone's life miserable. Trent and Kayla's entire picture of me, the version of me they'd been fighting against in that custody case, had been constructed almost entirely out of Marissa's lies. And it got worse, or maybe better, depending on how you look at it. Marissa had told them she paid for the custody case. She didn't. She didn't even have a job when that case started. I footed that entire bill, every cent of it, out of the pocket that was now empty. And then Kayla told me the thing that put the final piece in place. Marissa had admitted to them, to Trent and Kayla, that she had cheated on me. I'd found out, and that finding out was the real reason we were no contact now. Not some vague litany of issues. Infidelity. She betrayed me. I discovered it, and then she'd spun a story to everyone, including the people who now had custody of our daughter, that recast me as the villain to cover her own tracks. I stood there in that driveway and felt the ground shift. Every cruel thing I believed about Trent and Kayla, it had been manufactured. And every noble thing Marissa had presented about herself, manufactured too. I'd spent a year hating the wrong people. But Kayla wasn't done, and what she said next is the part I'll carry for the rest of my life. She told me that Marissa takes the bare minimum time with Lily. Sometimes not even that. The mother who gave up custody, who I'd assumed was at least still showing up, she wasn't, not really. And then Kayla told me about Lily. She said my daughter is always overwhelmingly excited to see me and my family. Then the days leading up to a visit, Lily talks about it almost nonstop, counting down, buzzing with it. And then she told me the thing that brought me to my knees right there in that driveway. She said that right after the original breakup, back in those dark days when I was lying in that too-big bed doing my cold arithmetic. Lily had been in tears, nearly inconsolable, for days, because she was terrified she would never see me or my family again. The whole time I'd been on my end, drowning, convinced I was losing her. She'd been on her end, drowning too, convinced she was losing me. We'd been two people reaching for each other across a gap that other people's lies had dug between us. And the people I'd been told to fear were the ones who'd quietly thrown us a rope. Kayla looked at me and said she made it her personal goal to keep my relationship with Lily intact. Her goal. This woman, who I'd spent a year treating as the enemy, had decided that no matter what, this little girl was going to keep her dad. And, of course, I was completely on board. I'm seeing a whole new side of these two people now. They've been the bedtime rules, sometimes so Lily and I can finish a conversation or squeeze in one more round of Fortnite. They make sure she has extra time to call me. We're already planning the next visit before the current one is even over. And then, and I almost can't say this without my voice cracking, Kayla told me something. She and I share the same birthday, the exact same day. And on that shared birthday, she gave up her time with Lily so that I could have it. She handed me the one day a year that was supposed to be hers so that I could spend it fishing with my daughter. I don't have words big enough for what that meant. A woman I'd considered an enemy gave me her own birthday, so I could be a dad for one more day. Drop a comment below. Do you think Kayla and Trent made the right call, choosing the truth and this kid's happiness over all the old hostility? Because I think about it constantly, and I'm not sure I'd have had the grace to do what they did if our positions were reversed. There was one moment after all of this that put a bow on the whole thing for me. Lily told me, on one of our calls, completely matter of fact, that a certain weekend was supposed to be her mom's weekend with her, but that her mom was busy with her friends. Just like that, busy with friends. And I felt that old anger flare because no kid should ever come second to a Friday night out. But then I let it go because here's what I understood now. I get to be the one who's never busy. I get to be the constant. I answer every call. I show up. I'm the dad who took a phone call from his kid in the middle of a date because she needed to hear my voice more than I needed that evening to go smoothly. That's the role I get to play in her life. The steady one. The one who's always there. I want to address one more thing because somebody, somewhere, always says it. When I shared this story, there was a voice in the crowd. There's always one who said, essentially, she isn't your kid. You have no custody rights. You never adopted her. So what's the big deal? And I want to answer that as clearly as I know how, because it's the spine of everything I've told you. I raised that girl from 14 months old. I have poured my blood, my sweat, and more tears than I'd ever admit into raising her. Legally adopted or not, she is my kid, and she always will be. I understand I don't have custody rights. I understand that on paper I'm nobody. But paper doesn't check the closet for monsters. Paper doesn't learn how she likes her sandwiches cut. Paper doesn't sit on a lake bank for 3 hours with a kid who doesn't even like fishing, just because she wants the company. I have been there for every up and every down of the last 10 years, and I'm going to be there for every up and every down of all the years to come. Nobody, not a stranger, not a court, not a lie, gets to tell me she isn't my child. So here I am. A few months ago, I was certain I'd lost her. I'd shrunk my entire hope down to a single fragile maybe, that when she turned 18, she might reach back across the wreckage and find me. And now I have no fear about my relationship with my kid. None. We video call, we play games, we go fishing, she sits at my family's holiday table. And the two people I once considered my greatest enemies have turned out to be my greatest allies in keeping me in my daughter's life. I've already invited Trent and Kayla, by the way, told me she doesn't like the word step, so I'm learning to just call her Lily's other mom. Over for a cookout sometime, all the kids together. I'm even thinking that next year, Kayla and I might throw a shared birthday party, since fate apparently decided we'd be born on the same day. Here's what I've learned, and it's the only thing I really want you to take from all of this. The story you're told about who your enemies are is not always the true story. Lies can build a war out of nothing, and they can keep two people who love each other apart for as long as everyone believes them. But the truth has a way of surfacing, usually through the simple, unglamorous act of two people finally sitting down and actually talking to each other. I spent a year hating people who were quietly protecting my daughter. And the person I trusted most turned out to be the one who built the whole prison. Blood doesn't make you a parent. Showing up does. And as long as that little girl will have me, by phone, by video, on a lake bank with a line in the water, I will keep showing up every single day for the rest of my life. Because I never stopped being her dad. I just, for one terrible season, forgot that nobody could actually take that away from me. Guys, we are so close to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 1,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.